You lose, losers. That's Donald Trump's message to the U.S. Trade Court. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's his message to the U.S. Trade Court after a court of appeals upheld his tariffs, his Liberation Day tariffs that were put in place on April the 1st that a trade court said, no, you don't have the power for. An appeals court said, yeah, he does, which Donald Trump knew all along. And this was the big news for a couple of days as the Democrats finally thought that they had some allies in a trade court that could stop President Donald Trump from making America great again, because there's nothing Democrats hate more. Well, they hate Donald Trump, but the only thing they hate more than President Donald Trump is anybody who wants to make America great again. And Donald Trump is, of course, leading that charge. Caroline Leavitt mentioned the order or the decision by the trade court in her press briefing yesterday, just hours before the appellate court overturned it.
Last night, the Trump administration faced another example of judicial overreach. Using his full and proper legal authority, President Trump imposed universal tariffs and reciprocal tariffs on Liberation Day to address the extraordinary threat to our national security and economy posed by large and persistent annual U.S. goods trade deficits. The United States has run a trade deficit of goods every year since 1975. In 2024, our trade deficit in goods exceeded $1 trillion. Everybody agrees this is unacceptable. President Trump is delivering on his promise to fix this problem, and he has taken a long overdue and much needed bold stance for American workers after decades of our manufacturing base being hollowed out. The president's rationale for imposing these powerful tariffs was legally sound and grounded in common sense. President Trump correctly believes that America cannot function safely long-term if we are unable to scale advanced domestic manufacturing capacity, have our own secure critical supply chains, and our defense industrial base is dependent on foreign adversaries. Three judges of the U.S. Court of International Trade disagreed and brazenly abused their judicial power to usurp the authority of President Trump to stop him from carrying out the mandate that the American people gave him. These judges failed to acknowledge that the President of the United States has core foreign affairs powers and authority given to him by Congress to protect the United States economy and national security.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he did, and that's exactly why he imposed the tariffs, and that's exactly why the court overruled it, because they don't want Donald Trump to exercise his executive authority granted to him by Congress and the Constitution of the United States. They don't want Donald Trump doing anything that's going to, benefit Americans and keep the elitists from patting their pockets with whatever kind of payoffs they get. China's not happy with these tariffs, and China pays a lot of money to a lot of Democrats and Republicans here in the United States of America, which could be one of the reasons why these Democrats and some Republicans are trying to stop these things dead in their tracks. Then, in what was a truly prophetic statement, but also not really, because everybody knew that this court had overstepped its bounds. I mean, you want to talk about judicial overreach? This was one of the most slam dunk cases, slam dunkiest cases we've ever seen of judicial overreach. And that's why Caroline Leavitt told the media yesterday, oh yeah, we're going to win.
The administration is operating under the directive given from the president that we need to comply with the court's orders. He's made that very clear, but we're going to fight them in court, and we're going to win on the merits of these cases because we know we are acting within the president's legal and executive authorities.
Yeah, look at that. And that is the one thing that Donald Trump does, which I think surprises a lot of people, is he listens to the courts. He disagrees with the courts. He appeals the court decisions, but he does not overrule the courts or override the courts. He will uphold each and every one of these directives, but then he will fight tooth and nail in court. And as we learned yesterday, this thing was overturned pretty quickly. Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, said, look, this is a ridiculous case for a couple of reasons. Number one, Donald Trump clearly has the power. Number two, if Congress wanted to take away the power, they would have, and they did not.
Well, Brett, it seems highly inappropriate for the judiciary to wade in here when the Senate had the opportunity to override the president and didn't. So, in terms of separation of powers, the Senate has chosen not to exercise their powers, and the president absolutely has the right to set the trade agenda for the U.S. This administration is committed to fair trade, and we are striking the best deals for the American people, and anything that the courts do to get in the way, both harms the American people in terms of trade and in terms of tariff revenue.
Yeah, and that is something that is 100% accurate. The Congress would have stopped him. They did not. The courts have no business weighing in, except, of course, that the Democrats are trying to do anything they can to stop Donald Trump right in his tracks. And Howard Lutnick, the Commerce, I mean, this is Donald Trump, who's already waded into the swamp once before. He knows how things work, and he knows that everything he does has to be, number one, powerful, number two, quick, and number three, within the scope of the law. And he's had people working for years around the clock to figure out exactly how he could use his executive powers, what was considered outside the realm of his authority, and what he could do in order to impose the agenda, the radical and the very bold agenda that he pushed forward to usher in the new golden age, with tariffs, with free trade, with low taxes, with no illegal thug immigrants killing us, all that great stuff that he campaigned on and that we elected him to do. He wanted to know what he could do and how he could do it within the constraints of the law. And Howard Lutnick was like, look, we know what Donald Trump can do. We know what the powers are. And this is why we chose this route. And this is why, again, the court case will be overruled.
The president's spoken about the national emergency that's led us to these giant trade deficits, right? I mean, he spoke about it on the campaign trail, and he wanted to use the sweeping powers of IEPA. Now, he has many, many other laws and authorities that he can use, and he'll take them out if he needs to. But right now, he likes the sweeping authority because it lets him deal with everybody who treats us unfairly, who doesn't treat us reciprocally. He can use IEPA to do the whole world and sort of set America up correctly and protect America from the national emergency. But as you know, we're going to go through the courts, and you should always bet on Donald Trump, because what we've all seen is he does not lose.
Yeah, and that is exactly what happened, because Kevin Hassett, who's the national director of the Economic Council, said yesterday on the news, guess what? We not only got an appeal, but we got it in record time. And I was actually surprised that it took them, this many hours.
We're very pleased with the ruling. We expected it. The bottom line is that our U.S. Trade Representative, Jamieson Greer, is the best trade thinker in the business, that President Trump's case is ironclad, and the appeals court took almost no time at all. In fact, we're surprised it took till the end of the day for them to overturn this previous ruling. The bottom line is that President Trump's trade team has their eyes on the horizon. They understand that we've got to make America great again by making trade deals fair, by advantaging U.S. producers and U.S. farmers when they sell things in foreign markets, and leveling the playing field at home for foreign products that are brought here. And so this is a big victory for the president. And I just got to say that you also can see, if you just look at the data, that President Trump's vision is working, that we've received $50 to $60 billion in tariff revenue since we've started the tariffs. Inflation has gone down. In fact, if you think about it, the automakers for foreign auto companies are running ads saying they're not going to increase prices. So it's working exactly the way we thought, and we're very pleased with the decision today.
Yeah, very pleased with the decision, although we wanted it to come a little bit faster. President Donald Trump is putting forward every effort he can to make America great again. And today he's having a press conference in the Oval Office with Elon Musk. It's Elon Musk's last day today. Last official day as a government employee. He had 130 days with which to enact his Doge, I guess you would say, his Doge dominance. And so today, President Donald Trump is having a press conference at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, which we will cover, by the way, during our Mark Kaye Saves the Republic podcast with Elon Musk. This will be his last day, but not really, because he will always be with us, helping all the way. Elon is terrific. See you tomorrow at the White House. So Donald Trump is hosting Elon Musk in the Oval Office today for a press conference, and he's going to say, look, it's his last day, but not really. We wish him well, but we're still going to be working with him. He's done so much. He's going to continue to do even more. I'm not really sure what else is going to happen in this press conference. I imagine they'll take a bunch of questions, but this is coming off of a week when there have been questions about what the Congress is doing to codify the Doge cuts. Elon Musk and his team came in and found billions and billions of dollars worth of waste, fraud, and abuse. They were hired by Donald Trump to find waste, fraud, and abuse. In record time, they found massive amounts of waste, fraud, and abuse. They wrote a report that said, we found all this waste, fraud, and abuse. And then the Republicans in Congress said, great, we're going to take a couple weeks off. Maybe we'll get to it. Maybe we won't. The Republicans in Congress said, great, thanks for the report. And they kind of treated it the way you treat, your junk mail. You either throw it in a drawer and forget about it, or you just toss it in the trash. And a lot of Americans are very upset, and they're trying to say, wait a minute, President Trump wanted DOJ to go in and cut the waste, fraud, and abuse. DOJ found the waste, fraud, and abuse. Why isn't Congress cutting it? Well, there is a rescission bill coming up with the Congress when they return, I believe, Monday, they're supposed to come back to work. And Kevin Hassert, the national director of the Economic Council, said this is not the only rescission bill. This is just the first of the rescission bills.
$9.4 billion. Is that a start? How many of these packages could we see forwarded by the White House?
Oh, there are way more coming. But the thing that I want you to understand is that if we rescind the package through a congressional vote, then the crazy, silly money that the Biden administration was spending on, I don't know, research on dancing for chipmunks or whatever, that money that we're not spending and we're not going to spend it is not going to get spent. If we rescind it through Congress, which we could do with only 51 votes of the Senate, then the money's gone forever. But if we don't spend it, then we have to not spend it again next year. We prefer a permanent fix, so we send it up. We rescind it through votes up on the Hill. But don't worry, the stuff that Elon and his team and OMB and their team that they've identified that's wasting American taxpayers' money, we're not going to spend it either way. But what we'd like to do is not spend it and have it come out of the baseline so that nobody ever gets to spend it again without passing a bill to pass it. And
you're here to ensure us there will be other rescission package forwarded to Congress.
100%. And anything that we don't send to Congress, then we can just not spend it, and then it goes away at the end of the budget year.
All right. So Kevin Hassett saying, look, we're not going to spend this money either way. We want it to be taken out of the budget so that nobody can ever spend it. There has been, of course, how do I put this nicely? There is, when given the opportunity to spend or not spend money, given the option, just, hey, guys, spend this or don't spend it, Congress always seems to lean toward, the spend it. I don't think, in fact, Congress spends money that they don't even have. That's one of the big problems with Congress. So I would think that these rescission packages going through so that the spending can never, ever, it's not to take away the option. You never even want to give somebody in government the option to spend your money, because they will, without fail, without question, and without regret, spend every last dime that you give them. So these rescission packages going through are important. They must be passed. And that is going to require, again, that very, very slim Republican majority. There's very few votes to lose. In fact, especially if these guys keep sleeping. If they can't wake up and make it for a vote, we could be cooked, and the spending could continue out of control. Speaking of which, there's a couple of other things that have been that were popping up and that Caroline Leavitt mentioned in her press briefing yesterday. And one of them was Jill Biden. There are some subpoenas going out from the House of Representatives and from others to Biden aides and representatives who worked in the White House during the Biden years. With Jake Tapper's book coming out, I imagine, now we're starting to see some investigations. And the Republicans, it seems like they're finally getting serious about investigating one of the biggest frauds ever perpetrated on the United States of America, and that is Biden-gate. I don't know if anyone's calling it that, but I'm calling it that. And while the aides are a good first start, and while assistants are probably very knowledgeable, Caroline Leavitt and a lot of other people want to see some of the bigger names, some of the higher names, some of the more high-profile people in the Biden administration hauled in front of a committee for questioning as well. And one of them is former First Lady Dr. Jill Biden.
I think, frankly, the former First Lady should certainly speak up about what she saw in regards to her husband and when she saw it and what she knew, because I think anybody looking again at the videos and photo evidence of Joe Biden with your own eyes and a little bit of common sense can see this was a clear cover-up, and Jill Biden was certainly complicit in that cover-up. There's documentation, video evidence of her clearly shielding her husband away from the cameras. They were just on The View last week. She was saying everything is fine. She's still lying to the American people. She still thinks the American public are so stupid that they're going to believe her lies. And frankly, it's insulting, and she needs to answer for it.
Jill Biden should answer for it. Jill Biden needs to be hauled up, and there need to be serious questions asked of the former First Lady. I don't know if a former First Lady has ever been investigated by a committee, but it would not shock me if Jill Biden were the first. And Caroline Leavitt saying, yeah, look, she lied to the American people. people. She tried to cover it up. Nobody who saw the videos, nobody who saw the photos, nobody who listened to Joe Biden's speeches, nobody who interacted with this guy could possibly have, with common sense, say that there's nothing wrong with him. Well, nobody except, of course, Jill Biden and apparently Jake Tapper. She also mentioned with the situation in Gaza, which hopefully we are close to a ceasefire with. President Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the Middle East, have put together a new document, a new term sheet, and they've sent it out. And hopefully there will be some kind of movement toward peace in the Middle East, which is which is one of the top priorities of President Donald Trump's not just first agenda, but now his second.
I can confirm that Special Envoy Witkoff and the president submitted a ceasefire proposal to Hamas that Israel backed and supported. Israel signed off on this proposal before it was sent to Hamas. I can also confirm that those discussions are continuing, and we hope that a ceasefire in Gaza will take place so we can return all of the hostages home, and that's been a priority from this administration from the beginning. I won't comment further as we are in the midst of this right now.
Yeah, and that is, of course, one of the battles that is brewing or that has been brewing that Donald Trump is trying to end. He's also trying to end the very bloody and destructive war between Ukraine and Russia, which continues to rage on. However, one war that he's pretty content on fighting and continuing to fight is the war with Harvard and their international students, and also China. And yesterday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio released this statement on X. The U.S. will begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. That is clearly an escalation, not just toward Harvard, but to other Ivy League institutions and MIT and Stanford and other schools that are bringing in these Chinese students, teaching them everything that they can about robotics and computer technology and AI, and then shipping them back to China so they can use all of the skills that they got here in the United States, and also that we paid for, because remember, there's billions of dollars worth of grant money going to all of these institutions, your tax dollars paying Chinese students to learn how to beat us at basically everything, and then we ship them home. That doesn't make sense anymore. That's why these visas are being revoked. And here is Stephen Miller to explain exactly why it's such a great idea.
China has been engaging in the theft of American trade secrets, industrial espionage, and the wholesale destruction of our intellectual property, our trademarks, our copyrights for years, Laura. They steal our nation's secrets, they steal our nation's industry, and of course they engage in predatory economic practices designed to cripple our industries and bring American manufacturing to a halt. This has been going on for decades, in earnest, of course, since China entered the World Trade Organization. So President Trump has taken firm and decisive action to say that we are not going to allow our immigration system to be used as an instrument of exploiting America's wealth, America's secrets, or America's industrial might.
And that's why we are now revoking the visas of any Chinese students coming to the United States of America. And that is a national security issue, as well as, good common sense. Listen, we will have Donald Trump's press conference with Elon Musk live in the Oval Office, and we will do it live today during our second daily podcast, Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, which I have right here that I will bring on the screen for you. If you're not yet subscribed, if you want to listen at your leisure, go to whatever podcast platform you use, whether it's Spotify or iTunes or one of the millions of others. Search Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. Download, listen, and enjoy.